Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. I'm Catherine Bell, and I'm with Russ Hudson. And today we thought it would be worthwhile to do a meditation, and then we're going to be specifically talking about type. So, Russ, can you please lead us through a meditation?
Sure. All right. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up? Okay, good. Excellent. Good to see all of you. Well, let's get right into it. I'm very fond of telling people, including this people, that, you know, meditating can be a kind of formal thing. It could also be just a way of turning the lights on what's already happening in us. And I find that latter orientation tends to be more helpful. Um, so, um, can everybody see me? Oh, good. Nice. Okay. Uh, when when we come into a moment of presence, there's already stuff going on. Presence isn't exactly something else to do. It's more like showing up in the midst of what we're already doing. And what we're already doing is, 90 some percent unconscious, automatic, mechanical, as Gurdjieff said. But suddenly, as I become connected with myself, it's like switching on these different intelligences, turning them brighter. So with the body, switching on that intelligence means sensing myself here, feeling my live sensation, feeling my breath. And there's a beautiful way of coming right back to where I am right now through the body. And, embodiment does not mean just doing stuff. If that were true, there's a lot of busy people out there who ought to be enlightened by now. So that isn't the case. Nor does working out make us necessarily awake, nor does even doing yoga, right? All of these things can be done rather mechanically, or we switch on this light of intelligence and we're sensing our body breathing, we're sensing our movement. And even if we're sitting quietly, that's doing something. As long as we're alive, we're doing something. Even if we're asleep, we're doing something. So am I with what I'm doing? And here from the body perspective, that means breathing and sensing. I learned this many years ago. I've taught it in every single class I ever do, and it never gets old. Nor do we ever have it down. Something we have to keep continually rediscovering. That part of us isn't autopilot. And just to notice as I do that, there can be an increase of a sensitivity and a kindness toward myself. And that means the heart's coming in. The heart usually doesn't turn on until we're a little more in the body. When we land in the breath and the body, the heart gets the message, the coast is clear. And I can come out. I can reveal more of my nature on a heart level. A beautiful sensitivity and exquisite awareness that the heart brings can come out of its hiding places. Some of us hide our heart behind our emotionality. Isn't that interesting? You say, but to really be here with my heart is a very different thing. So just to be with that sensitivity for a moment, an attitude of patience, kindness toward myself, gentleness. It's not something that takes a lot of work because that's the natural condition for the heart. The heart naturally is that way. Also, if as we get more awake in the heart, we'll start to notice the emotional moods or reactions that we're already experiencing. But as we breathe into the body and support the heart can rise and meet our feelings, and that changes them, transforms them, without me trying to produce anything. And you may notice that as I'm with this heightened, beautiful, precise, sensitive intelligence, my mind kind of quiets down. Or you might say it gets more spacious. Maybe there's some thoughts still going on, but as I get more grounded in the body and heart, those thoughts are less distracting. They're just something else that's happening in the field of my awareness. I don't need to stop anything as if I could. I just meet my thoughts also here with curiosity, openness, listening. And now I just notice even doing this a few minutes and with the support of everyone else who's on this call, we can come to a very different relationship with ourselves and with life than what we ordinarily think is winning the day. The character that I trot out all day long is a very small part of what I actually am. And it's not wrong or bad, but as we start to reclaim more of the territory of our soul, we have a very different experience in how we move through our life and our day and our world. So may we remember that as we spend these minutes together. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Russ. That was a lovely meditation and a great way to start us off. So, three-part question on type. First is, can you please briefly describe each type, the stress symptoms of each type, and then what actions you would suggest for each type in terms of how to grow and how to evolve?
Okay. It's a tall order in a short time, but I'll do what I can.
You can do it.
All right. I'm just in my mind listening in to see whether I should begin with 8 or 1. Sometimes start with 1, it's number 1, but start with 8. Okay, Catherine's here. We'll start with 8. I often start with 8 because 4. Okay, I get that. That'd be a very interesting place to start. No, I start with 8 because 8, 9, and 1 at the top of the Enneagram represent the parts of the psyche connected to embodiment, or what we call the belly center. Now, that doesn't mean that those types only have a belly. Of course, they have a heart and a mind. And it doesn't mean that they have more belly than other people. I don't even know what that would mean. People get more narcissistic about this stuff when we start talking about the heart. Oh, I'm a heart person. I have more heart. No, you don't. You're just more preoccupied with it. That doesn't mean you have more heart. But what it does mean is there are capacities that are important for these types, and there are psychological issues that cluster around those capacities. So 8, kicking us off, has to do, and you could think of all of them also as parts of our total humanity. So there are people who are 8s, of course, and there are And that just means this energy is dominant for them. It doesn't mean it's the end of the story by any stretch. It just means that's the energy I lead with as a person. But everybody has an inner 8. We all have access to 8 energy. And 8 energy is just simply, if I'm present in my body, if I'm present, which I don't see any other way to be present, but if I'm actually here, breathing and sensing in the way I was talking about, I start to feel more alive, connected with the life force, more vital, more energized, more ready for life. And that, for reasons that we don't exactly know, but that we can experience, when I connect with that life force, I feel more confident. I feel empowered. I feel like I have a voice. I feel like I can take my place in the world. And that 8 energy, therefore, is very important to everyone, even if we're not an 8. Now, the thing is, when we're other types and we lose presence, well, we'll just be a little flat and numb and kind of psychologically dead, and it's okay with us. But for 8s, since this is their main gift, if you will, that's not a situation that is tolerable. So each type produces a kind of psychological pattern, an ersatz version of the real quality. And the passion and the fixation of each type are ways of describing the emotional and mental parts of what ego is doing to recreate that quality that comes through presence. Now, the sign that we're getting stressed is that we're doing a lot of that ego activity. When Don Riso was working on this material years ago, and then he brought me on board to help him out, and we worked for a long time on the idea of levels of development. And what a really practical and simple way you can think about that is that we're not always fixated to the same degree. We could be a little bit fixated or a lot fixated. We could have a little touch of the passion of our type, or we could have a lot of the passion of our type. The passion is kind of a symptom of our suffering and our stress. It means that we're in some kind of suffering, and so there's a certain form that takes in how we are trying to manage ourselves and manage our emotions and move through our world from even with this suffering. So for the 8, it's called lust. And lust doesn't mean necessarily sexual lust. It can, but most of the time it's not that. Lust is this trying to make things alive and real and to make energy happen out of my ego efforting, right? It's like I'm pushing everything. I'm pushing the world along. I'm pushing myself along. And I get accustomed to that, so much so that if I'm not kind of stressing myself that way, I don't feel like myself. So I can become an 8 that just doesn't even trust to relax, because if I do, then who am I? If I'm not efforting and pushing and making everything happen, then who or what am I? Well, we find out that by relaxing that efforting and that lustfulness, which it has roots in body armor and resistance and trying to toughen myself up, suck it up kind of attitude. All of that is just my lust. And it's all a denial of my sensitivity. Because as we're really real and empowered, we're also more sensitive. The two kind of come together. We're more loving. We're more appreciative. We're power and sensitivity go together. Love and power go together. And so in a way that 8 energy gives me a greater capacity to really be in the presence of love. If we're all contracted and numb and a wimpy little thing, we cannot really be in the majesty of love. So the journey out of that is to accept our sensitivity and to recognize, this is the cognitive part, the limits of our control. The 8 part of us, the cognitive part of the structure, is to think I can, not only can I should be in control of things. I should be in control of my emotions. I should be in control of the resources. I should be in control of this crisis. I should know what to do and handle it, damn it. And when I can't, I kind of freak out. So from this point of view, embracing with kindness the limitations of our control, seeing that we aren't in charge of the universe, that we can't make things happen, we then become, how can I say, if I was going to put a little in religious language, we become more willing to cooperate with higher forces of grace. We become more willing to be transparent so something can move through us. And we see that that life force I talked about doesn't belong to us. It's something that we can be open to. It's bigger than my idea of myself, right? So the other thing I have to say a little bit about, and maybe we'll have to do some of these next time. I don't know how I'll be able to get through all 9 of them in the time we have, but I'll do what I can. Because there's no point talking about it unless we can get to something helpful. The other thing that's important is there are all those inner lines in the Enneagram, and they mean very specific things, and they don't mean one is good and one is bad. That's a wrong view. But they have different functions. One of the lines, which is called, Don originally called it the direction of disintegration. We changed that because it's not really disintegrative. I like to call it the direction of stress. So guess what? When we're getting stressed, like during an epidemic, we might exhibit symptoms of our direction of stress. And sometimes we hang out there rather than feel the full brunt of our freak out in our own type. Sometimes it's easier to just push our little stress button and go that way. So for an 8, the direction of stress is toward 5. And usually each stress point is kind of doing the opposite of what you would usually do. So 8s are usually on the front line, making it happen, pushing it, taking names, kicking ass, making sure that the right things happen. The 5 is the most withdrawn type, the most isolated, quiet. All you people stay away from me. I've got to figure some things out here. And one sign you'll notice that you're really getting into stress as an 8 is you'll start isolating. You'll start withdrawing from people. Maybe you're still showing up and doing the things you're supposed to do, but there's a growing sense of isolation, disconnect, and being all on your own. As that starts to come on, the main reason we learn the Enneagram is not to, quote, know who we are. These patterns are not who we are. They're just the patterns that we have that have grown in us. I have this kind of salt and pepper beard, but I am not a salt and pepper beard. You see, I have blue eyes, but I'm not blue eyes. It's just their capacities, there's qualities. When we notice, for example, as an 8, that, wow, I'm really isolating. I'm sort of taking my inner phone off the hook. I'm just getting very mental and contracted. That ought to be a sign to me that I really need to reconnect. I really need some self-care. I need some gentleness, and I need to reach out for support. That would be a big deal. It's the opposite of what my automatic tendency will be at that time. But to actually do it it feels like the end of the world when you're caught in that stuff. When you actually do it, it's salvation. Turns everything around. Brings you back into your aliveness and empowerment and your love. So, each type is going to have something like that. So if you're pushing too hard, efforting too much, and or isolating, these are signals. They're alarm clocks letting you know that you're swimming in the wrong direction. And again, I think that's one of the best ways we can use the Enneagram is to see how the particular ways these patterns get triggered and take over all of our deeper heart and wisdom. So moving along to the nine, our second type in the body center, the gift of the nine, or the essence of the nine, is about presence itself, really. It's about being landed. It's about getting grounded and feeling grounded. And as I said, we get grounded through a direct contact with our body. Nines are so interesting because they have generally what I call smart bodies. They are really good at physical stuff. Many nines are great athletes or musicians. They're good. They're dexterous. They have wonderful motor skills. Many nines, not all, of course, but many. It's sort of like our bodies are so smart, we don't need to be present in them. So, but when we're in this body, when we're home, it feels like being home. We feel like we've returned to ourself. We've come home to our soul, to our heart and soul. And in so doing, this is the other thing that's very counterintuitive. When we really connect with ourselves this way, when we come back into this grounded breath, physical presence, right here being, we reconnect with everything. And our mind thinks if I get into the body, I'm going to be more cut off from everything, but it's the opposite of the truth. We're cut off from everything when we're walking around with spacey, dissociative ideas that have no bearing to where we are in the moment. That's disconnected. Sitting around thinking about oneness is not the same, and blabbing about it is not the same as being here in the moment where you are at one with the living reality that's here right now. This is a really important point to get for everybody. And I hope you're seeing again that there are people who are nines, and the rest of us sure do this sometimes too, both from the ground point of view and from the getting ungrounded and caught up in our personality stuff and not really being here in the living moment that we're occupying, not home in ourselves. So nines have an intuitive sense of that, what it's like when we're at home. And again, when we are, reality feels more unified, more whole, the kind of idea of being holistic, whole. We feel that wholeness, we experience it in ourselves, we experience it in the world, and we have an intuitive understanding of harmony and balance, which comes out in a lot of different ways. In the kind of work we do, it comes out in artistic creations, it comes out in how we interact with people. But there's an intuitive body-based sense of when things are harmoniously flowing and when they're not, or when we're stuck, let's say. So when we're, a lot of people just not grounded, and they're fine with that. They walk around, they're either hiding out and cut off that way, or they're decapitated chickens running around thinking they're doing everything, but not really connected to themselves. So when any of us comes home, we're going to get that nine energy. Some types don't even notice or care, but for the nine, this wholeness and harmony and balance and feeling relaxed into myself and connected is the thing. That's my gift. I'd add that you really get here in nine the centrality of relaxation. How important relaxation is. I once asked one of my mentors, one of the great teachers of the Gurdjieff work, was a lady named Madame de Salzman, and she was an Enneagram 8. But her big advice to me, which was what was to everyone, until you're relaxed in your body, nothing else interesting is going to happen. So first things first. And why 9 kind of sits there at the top of the Enneagram. So when we're not present, our body becomes tense and shut off, and we disconnect from the harmony, we disconnect from the wholeness. We're in our own little world, which is a disconnected world. And 9s kind of have a vestigial sense that I kind of know and notice I'm disconnected. But on a personality level, the way home would be to come back to the body and breath, and oop, that's scary. In that direction lies old conflicts, traumas, and worst of all, anger. Is a 9. I really fear my own anger. I'm afraid that I have so much aggression inside. If I ever really got in touch with myself, I'll just kill everybody. We start to learn that that aggression is the very life force that we saw in 8, and we actually need it in order to be grounded. It's not necessarily people who act badly and violently and so forth are people not in touch with that energy. That's why they act that way. If they were, they would not behave that way. They're thrashing around because they're not connected. Still, there's a journey that the 9 has to go on. But again, the sense of being exiled in a way, or cut off from that wholeness is so painful to 9s that they psychologically create an internal sense of wholeness. They have an internal sense of, I create an internal whole world, but one that's disconnected from the physical world, or even the spiritual world. I'm thinking about spiritual stuff doesn't mean I'm connected with reality, even the spiritual reality. Right? And there's a kind of willful, you're not going to get to me quality. There's just as much aggression in the 9 as there is in the 8, but it's all marshaled as a kind of stubborn defense. You guys aren't going to get to me. Or I'm very famous for my naughty thing. I say when I'm around people who've been in ashrams too long, namaste F you. You know, it's that, yes, hi, I'm very spiritual. Leave me the F alone is what it really means. It's not spiritual. It's a spiritual impulse. It's a real spiritual impulse, but it's been co-opted. It's been trapped in the psychological pattern of protecting myself from anything that I would see as disturbing, upsetting, overwhelming. That's what ego defenses do. It shouldn't be a shock to us. That's what ego defenses do. But we spiritualize it, or we put it in terms of religion or our own personal philosophy, and we just have a way of just checking out. So that isn't what's called for, and that actually creates conflicts. And importantly, in what we're talking about, if I see myself doing that, that's my sign that I am in trouble as a 9. I'm stressing. The more stress I feel as a 9, the less I want to deal with the troublesome realities around me. I'll go through the motions. I'll do what people expect me to do, but I don't want to, on a heart level, get involved. You see how that's like the 8 in a funny way? They both don't want to be affected. They both want to keep themselves safe behind some kind of energetic wall. They just have it looks different from the outside. Now, the other big thing here is that 9s go to 6 in stress. Their stress point is 6. So what does that mean? Well, part of the 9 defense is dissociative. Those of you know psychology, I literally leave myself. Last thing I need as a 9 is out of the body experience or lessons. I'm a master of rendering trances for myself. It's actually kind of a talent. And if I'm conscious of it, I can use it certain ways. If I'm not conscious of it, it becomes myself, and then I'm trapped in it. So when part of it is just sort of reassuring yourself, calming yourself, hypnotizing yourself, but the longer I do that, the longer I sometimes go without dealing with things I actually need to deal with. It's sort of like when tax time rolls around for many of us, or we need to go to the dentist, but suddenly it's time instead to reorganize my closet. There's a way we procrastinate and put off stuff we know we need to do. And because it's just a hassle, I don't want to deal with it, But then going to 6 is suddenly the bill comes due, the letter comes from the tax department, whatever, the tooth is now really hurting. And now we're in a kind of a freak out. We're nervous, we're worried, we're anxious, and we got to deal with it. So if you're a 9 and you've been chilling out maybe too much, trying to keep yourself from some distance from your feelings, eventually your feelings are going to come back and raise a ruckus. And they do. And that's a sign that I've kind of overdone my 9-ness. And the same thing, if the 8 has overdone her 8-ness, she's going to eventually pull back and be like the 5. So all these things are just signals. They're triggers that will help us realize, breathe, sense, find my heart, quiet down my mind, collect myself, pull myself back together. The challenge in all the Enneagram types is we think these patterns are what we are. So we can go hours, days, years without ever checking back into ourselves, just operating as these systems rather than coming back to the more wholeness of what we are as a human being. But I will say, my dear 9s, that you guys hold that little piece of remembering that there is something to us that is more whole than what we're usually being. And your great gift is to invite people back into that wholeness, into that relaxation, coming home to themselves and connecting with each other. So, you have to remember that for yourself first, and then that can be a tremendous gift for other people. And boy, do we need it now. Okay? So the one is, gee whiz, the gift of the one has to do with a lot of things. One word that comes to me right away it's what I would call natural integrity. That when we're present, we're not tricky, we're not complex, we're not deceiving ourselves or others. We're pretty much, most people when they're present are more straight arrows. Most people when they're present have a kind of beautiful dignity to how they comport themselves. And really any human being, you or me, when we're more present, we become more like spiritual adults, right? We're not kids waiting for somebody to ring the bell before we become present, right? We're not sitting around waiting for somebody to hand us something. We show up and benevolence. So I have to wait. It froze, didn't it? Well, here, the body starts to connect with the heart center here. And we start to care about being in integrity. We start to care about being in alignment with the truth that we understand. We care about being wise and receptive to deeper wisdom that can potentially come through us and use this beautiful human vehicle for intelligent purposes. And all ones in their heart of hearts kind of get that that's what life is about. That's what they want. That's what they're always aiming for. And indeed, ones who are present are exemplars of this quality of alignment. And the word I often will say here too is goodness. That's a hard word to define, but we sure know when we're in the neighborhood of goodness. We certainly know when we're in the presence of someone who is coming to us with that kind of purity of heart and intention, and there's a goodness to them. And we trust that. We get that on a physiological level. I think we recognize it. And ones, that's their gift. And that's what they want to be in the world. Now, when we lose presence from the point of view of the one, we're losing that goodness, we're losing that purity, we're losing that sense of being plugged in alignment. We're losing the sense that there's something sacred about this journey. And that's a really important point. Like when we're not present, it's like the sacredness of the world, of our life, of this moment fades. Like the golden fleece loses its luster. And the world seems kind of dark and messy and screwball and chaotic. And people just seem to be, to quote Gurdjieff, mad machines. And we just want to throw up our hands in disgust. And a lot of people we get cynical. We say, well, yeah, the world is screwed up. That's how it is. People are no damn good. You can't trust anybody, and that's just how it is. Get over yourself, right? But the one, having that purity of heart and that goodness as my home base, I can't accept that. I feel like it's my job to bring that. And it is. But from the presence point of view, it comes out very differently than when my ego tries to take over that job and tries to be the bringer of the goodness, the bringer of integrity, the one to set things straight again. That, ego gets beautiful credit for good intentions. We really want to do something good, but we're coming from the wrong place. Our ego doesn't understand what the real thing even is. It's operating at best on memories of moments where we felt closer to that. But that's not the same thing as connecting with it here and now. And just like the 8 and just like the 9, this requires a willingness to be open and vulnerable. It requires me to be in a state of not knowing. And here, and the vulnerability here in the 1 is that kind of like, I don't know. Let's find out. Whereas when we're in that kind of energetic armor, like the 8 and the 9, the 1's got their version, being right, being correct, already have the answer, did my homework, let me handle this. You see how that's similar to the 8 and the 9? They're all actually what this beautiful connection to this deeper level of humanity turns into a defense, because all ego structures are essentially defensive structures. And that defense, it's like that very talent I have is now employed to defend myself against being affected, whereas to actually be a vehicle in the way I wish to be, I have to be willing to be affected. That's a big turnaround for most people, especially when it's a crisis. But when the proverbial caca has hit the fan, as it certainly has in the world at this point, sometimes it's actually easier to contact these deeper qualities. Gurdjieff used to say that there was more higher energies flowed towards people who would be present and willing to be grounded and open when everybody else was freaking out. I like to think it's almost like the angels are looking for anybody here that's not out to lunch right now. Anybody? Oh, you? Okay, we'll work with you. It's kind of like that. And it does feel that way sometimes. That in these times of crisis, we feel that our indulgence in our mechanical, automatic, defensive way of being is a kind of a luxury. It costs a lot of energy. And so when we start to see how expensive that way of being is, there's that little window that opens where we might remember that we have another pathway available to us. So one's getting stressed, they're going to get more rigid, more tense, more physically tense, and more obviously so than some other Enneagram types. A lot of ones will start to lock up around their neck and their shoulder or their jaw. There's a whole patterns of tension. Boy, ones can keep massage therapists at work. Unfortunately, right now, most of us cannot go to a massage therapist unless you happen to be married to one or living with one. Then maybe you're in good shape. But you can have what I call an inner massage. And that is where you just meet your tension. And again, it's this impulse to try to control my experience. Meet that with kindness. What's here is a scared kid. What's here is a vulnerable kid that's still like an operating system in me. I just meet that. When I'm present, the inner adult, the inner kid has been waiting for, shows up. And then the inner kid can relax. Like, oh, okay. The wise adult is here now. I don't have to do this primal mechanism I learned to do when I was in the first few years of my life. So the other sign of stress here is that 1 goes to 4 in stress. And that's interesting because 1s are idealists. They really believe in human possibility. They don't give up easily. They persist. They want to hold the higher ground for what human beings might be. But when they overdo their oneness, there's a kind of collapse into a kind of self-pity, despair, loneliness, and kind of almost willful self-indulgence, where all the things that I usually don't allow myself because I'm trying to be something for the world, now I said, screw it, I'm going to do it. And it kind of, there's an intelligence in that, though. There's a recognition that the way I'm trying to control myself is not producing the needed result, because it's not the real integrity, which comes from groundedness, relaxation, sensitivity, right? This kind of trying to control my mind, my behavior, my feelings, this rigid structure produces an inner rebellion. And that rebellion is partially based on the recognition that what I've been doing doesn't work. What saves me as a 1 is coming back to the basics, coming back to square one. Square one for the 1, right? And this sense of, where am I right now? What's really in my heart right now? What's the wisest, most benevolent, kindest way I can manifest toward myself right now? And then if I can do that, I can translate that and bring some of that to the people I love, to the people around me. But again, we have to have some presence in the bank to even notice these things and remember and come back. So, yeah,
So Russ,
that's, yeah.
thank you, thank you, thank you. And here's what
Yeah.
I'm going to suggest.
Okay.
At Friday, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll schedule the rest later.
1, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think that works better, because trying to do all 9 types in half an hour, 40 minutes, what of value can I say, right? And what I really want people to understand about all these is these aren't bullet points. They're not just traits, or there isn't just a simple thing. We gain benefit by really feeling into the gestalt of it, by really getting the way the whole thing's operating and why. And then that gives us an opening to come back into that deeper ground, which is where we're going to find the good stuff that we're looking for, and the resources that will help us address with wisdom the situations we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm. True. So thank you, Russ, and to be continued on Friday, and then we'll set up some other times later. So we'll let everybody know. Follow russhudson.com and go to the IEA, because they'll have all the information as well. I know some people on the line are wondering about their types. So one thing I would suggest is to take a look at the Ready, which is on the EnneagramInstitute.com's website. So have a peek at that. So I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday.
Just one quick thing. You have been posting these on YouTube, right?
That's right. That's right, Russ. Yeah.
Yeah. Some people were asking about that on the chat. So perhaps we can put out to everybody. Where would they go to get this on YouTube?
So go to Awaken Company YouTube and you'll find it there. The IEA will also be sharing it. The first one is already public, and we'll get this one up as soon as we can. I'll also put it on Russ's Facebook page for everybody to see now too.
There you go.
Yeah.
So those are the options.
Great. Thank you, everybody. See you on Friday.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Happy week.
Happy week.
Thank you all.
All right. Bye for now.
Thank you, Russ. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.